events that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Hello and a very warm welcome. It's 9 PM IST. I'm Mauri Gambhir and we are coming to you live from the WION headquarters in Noida, India. This is Gravitas with a new look but the same old spirit. Let's get started. How did Ebrahim Raisi die? What really happened? There are a series of questions that have been doing the rounds along with conspiracy theories. That is our top story tonight on Gravitas. And here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. Is China secretly preparing for the next pandemic? Should you be worried? We tell you what's brewing. Gunmen have killed around 40 people in an attack in Nigeria's north-central plateau state where clashes between herders and farmers are rife. We tell you all that you need to know. The Singapore Airlines flight turbulence story has sent shockwaves around the world after severe turbulence left one dead and several injured. What caused the turbulence? And is it time to change the rules of flying? How dangerous is liquid nitrogen? A 12-year-old in India's Karnataka suffered a hole in her stomach after eating liquid nitrogen pan. We get you the complete story. What killed Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi? The chopper crash, of course, but not everyone is convinced. Conspiracy theories abound. In fact, they emerged the second the news broke of the chopper disappearing. Was it Israel? Was it another foreign power? People on the internet and off it cannot stop asking. And can you really blame them? After all, the timing is such. The geopolitical situation in West Asia and outside is such. For over 72 hours, we paid no heed to these theories, knowing very well that conspiracy theories always shadow such historical events. They are like conjoined twins. Did two shooters kill John F. Kennedy? Did NASA fake the moon landing? Was Princess Diana's death not an accident? Was Indian scientist Homi J. Bhabha killed? The answer is we do not know, and we may never know. But what we do have tonight are extensive details of the final moments of the chopper crash that killed the Iranian president. Do they hint at foul play, or do they put to rest all speculation? A man named Gholam Hossein Ismaili has given an explosive interview to an Iranian news network. Ismaili was Raisi's chief of staff. He was part of the helicopter convoy on the ill-fated day. He was in the chopper that was behind the president's helicopter. Ismaili says the weather that day was absolutely clear. There was no fog. It was only half an hour into the journey that they saw a small patch of clouds. He says, and I'm quoting, "In one small compacted area, there was a small patch of clouds above a cliff," quote unquote. Adding, quoting further, "It was there that the now martyred helicopter pilot, who was also the commander of the fleet, told the rest of the pilots to ascend above the clouds. We were third behind the president's helicopter. We rose above the clouds and advanced for approximately 30 seconds. Ismaili then described what he thought were an unusual series of events. 1. While ascending, they did not feel any turbulence. 2. After ascending, they realized there were no other clouds. 3. The pilot of his chopper suddenly realized the president's chopper was missing. They could not see it. It had disappeared." Now, let me quote from that interview again. "After ascending above the clouds, we did not see the main helicopter. The ascension itself did not feel difficult or hard. Sometimes when we use the plane, we feel turbulence, but we did not feel anything at all inside the helicopter this time when ascending. And after we ascended, there were no other clouds. Shortly after, we were able to see beneath us, and there were no clouds anymore." Ismaili says the pilot of his chopper decided to make a U-turn and look for the president's chopper. They thought the main chopper had made an emergency landing. But the pilot could not make radio contact with the commander of the president's chopper. Ismaili says, quoting, "I asked him when was the last time contact was made. The pilot answered, 1 minute and 30 seconds ago, when the pilot told us to ascend above the clouds," quote unquote. What happened next? Ismaili and the others on his chopper decided to start making phone calls to those in the president's helicopter. They called the president's bodyguard. They called the Iranian foreign minister, Hossein Amir Abdullahian. They also called the governor of East Azerbaijan, who was also on that ill-fated chopper, but they got no response. And finally, someone picked up the phone. Who was it? Let me read out from that interview. I'm quoting. "It was Ayatollah Hashim, the Friday Imam of Tabriz. He told us that he was not feeling well. He did not tell us anything special. I asked him what exactly had happened. He told us that he did not know what had happened. And when asked about his whereabouts, he said he did not know. He only described what he could see. Described to us what he saw. For example, how he was surrounded by trees. I asked him about the condition of the others. The Ayatollah replied that he is alone and could not see anyone else, and he is alone," quote unquote. And those were the final moments leading to the crash and resulting in the deaths of the Iranian president, the Iranian foreign minister, and everyone else traveling with them.
می‌بینین این تصاویر توسط پهپاد
parçalarını şu anda haber ekranlarında görüyoruz. Şöyle beni görebiliyor musun?
این خود بالگرده که سقوط کرده و الان اینجا دارین اینجا تصاویرشو می‌بینین.
And the interview invites more questions. How is it that 2 of the 3 choppers managed to ascend above the clouds, but the president's chopper disappeared? The president's chopper was being flown by the senior-most pilot. He was the one who had spotted the stray cloud. He instructed the other pilots what to do. Then how is it that the fleet's commander somehow could not navigate his own helicopter? Remember, Iran's state media first reported that the president's chopper had made a quote-unquote hard landing. The obscurity left enough scope for speculation, and speculation is exactly what followed. What took the Iranian authorities to find the missing chopper? Was there something they were covering up? Was it the state of Iran's decaying aerial fleet, or was it covering up an insider job? Or was there something else they had discovered at the crash site? You see, whenever there is a tragedy in Iran, the finger automatically points at its foe in the shadow war, Israel. The timing did not leave any scope for exception. Just weeks ago, Iran and Israel had their first direct conflict. On the 1st of April, Iran's consulate in Damascus was struck. 7 officers of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps were killed. Among them were 2 senior commanders. Iran responded by launching a missile and drone attack on Israel on the 13th of April. On the 19th of April, drones were shot down over the Iranian city of Isfahan. Iran did not blame Israel. That did not stop the world from reading between the lines. Israeli drones have a history of hovering into Iran and attacking military facilities. In fact, Israel's spy unit, Mossad, has a history of carrying out operations within Iran and getting away with it. In the year 2020, Iran's nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was killed while he was driving his car. Iran said Mossad had used a robotically operated machine gun which was mounted on a truck parked on the roadside and operated by a sniper who was sitting miles away. In April 2022, Israeli news outlet Haaretz reported that Israeli intelligence agents had detained and questioned an IRGC agent at his residence in Iran, where he confessed to a plan to assassinate an Israeli diplomat in Turkey. As recently as in June 2023, Mossad said that it carried out an operation in Iran and captured the suspected head of a hit squad that planned to kill Israelis in Cyprus. In a statement, Mossad quoted one of its senior officials as saying, and I'm quoting here, "We will get to every official who advances terror against Jews and Israelis anywhere in the world, including within the Iranian territory." In short, Mossad has a history of operations in Iran, and Israeli leaders know this very well, which explains why Israel was quick to dissociate itself from Raisi's death. Hours after the news broke, an Israeli official told Reuters, "It wasn't us." Here's what the U.S. said.
The United States had no part to play in that crash, and that's a fact, plain and simple.
Iran says it has launched a probe into the chopper crash. It's not unusual given the crash killed the country's president and foreign minister. Ebrahim Raisi's helicopter crash came as a shock, but it's not the first time something like this has happened. History is filled with many such mysterious crashes that have killed powerful figures, and nobody can tell for sure if they were accidents or murder plots. The latest victim was Yevgeny Prigozhin, Putin's chef. It might be fresh in your memory. The Wagner chief was on board a private jet from Moscow to St. Petersburg. The plane was Embraer Legacy 600. In its 20 years of operation, it had recorded only one accident, that too due to mistakes by the crew instead of a technical failure. The exact moment of the plane going down was caught on camera. Take a look.
Пиздец, это беспилотник. Сбили, бабахнуло, 2 раза взорвало.
How did this happen? The preliminary assessment concluded that a planned explosion caused the crash. Fingers were raised at the Kremlin, but it maintained silence, denying any involvement. However, the timing of it all could not be ignored. The crash came merely 2 months after Prigozhin's failed mutiny, remember. First he disappeared, then he released a video message seemingly from Africa, and a week later, he ended up dying in that plane crash. Who was behind all of this? It still remains a mystery. Another such death was of General Mohammad Zia-ul Haq. He was the 6th president of Pakistan. The year was 1988. On the 17th of August, General Zia-ul Haq was aboard a Lockheed C-130 Hercules. Along him were some of his generals and the American ambassador to Pakistan, Arnold Louis Raphael. They had flown to a desert site in Bahawalpur to watch a demonstration of the M1A battle tanks. The US had been pressing Pakistan to buy them. When the officials were traveling back to Islamabad, they met with a tragedy nobody saw coming, only a few miles out of Bahawalpur. The plane reportedly went up and down for a while before hitting the ground almost perpendicularly. This is what the wreckage looked like. A Pakistani official who was the first to reach the crash site told Dawn that he saw dismembered body parts of the general. He recognized them based on the general's clothes. Again, there were many questions. Was the crash a result of technical failure or an assassination? Was it a case of sabotage? If yes, then who was involved? Later, several commissions were formed by the Pakistani government to find out the truth, the cause behind the crash. One of them was Shafiqur Rahman Commission. It thoroughly investigated the incident, but the reports were never released. Why so? That also remains a mystery. Even the post-mortems of the bodies were stopped by a higher order. But there is a theory that is largely believed to be true. It is the mango crate theory. General Zia-ul Haq's son and former Pakistani minister Mohammad Ijazul Haq has also confirmed it. So what's the speculation? That the crates loaded in the plane not only carried mangoes but explosives as well. According to media reports, Ijazul Haq has said that there is evidence that the mango crates carried explosives. But that's not the full story. He also claimed that nerve gas was also pumped into the cabin to paralyze the pilots. Was that why the plane went up and down before crashing? And again, who was behind all of this? There are conspiracies pointing at President Zia-ul Haq's military secretary, but they have not been proven. And then there was the Air India 101 crash. The plane was carrying 117 passengers and crew members. Among them was a nuclear physicist and the father of India's nuclear program, Homi Jehangir Baba. Baba was a huge strategic asset to India. Losing him was a major setback to India's nuclear program. So what really happened? Only if we could find out. All we know is the flight took off from Mumbai. It was en route London via Delhi, Beirut and Geneva. The flight took off from Beirut but crashed a few minutes before landing in Geneva. Where exactly? At Europe's second highest peak, Mont Blanc. The precise reasons why the plane went down still remain unknown, but a strong theory is the CIA was involved. I say this based on an excerpt from a book. The book is titled Conversations with the Crow. It's a transcript of journalist Gregory Douglas's interview with retired CIA agent Robert Crowley. Let me read out what Crowley said about India and Homi J. Baba. I'm quoting, "We had trouble, with India back in the 60s when they got uppity and started work on an atomic bomb. And we did not want them to have any kind of nuclear weaponry. Oh yes, and their head expert was fully capable of building a bomb, and we knew just what he was up to. He was warned several times, but what an arrogant prick that one was. Name was Homi Baba. That one was dangerous, believe me. He was flying to Vienna to stir up more trouble when his 707 had a bomb go off in the cargo hold, and they all came down on a high mountain way up in the Alps. We could have blown it up over Vienna, but we decided the high mountains were much better for the bits and pieces to come down on, quote unquote. Let me repeat that. Quoting again, we could have blown it up over Vienna, but we decided the high mountains were better. That is what the former CIA agent said on record. What more confession do we really need? Maybe it's not as big a mystery as we thought it to be. But Raisi's death is. What happened to him adds to the long list of unsolved, high-profile air crashes.
منطقه جلفای آذربایجان شرقی که منجر به شهادت خادم جمهوری اسلامی ایران تسلیت گفتند. امروز روز ناگواری در تاریخ پرفراز و نشیب ملت مسلمان ایران بود و ایران عزیز در سانحه‌ای تلخ به بغداد
بازدید رئیس جمهور از راهگذر.
And we have some breaking news coming in right this minute. This is coming in from the UK. Reports saying the general elections in the UK will be held on the 4th of July. That's the latest coming in. An announcement is expected from the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak any moment now. And tracking the very latest for us and telling us more about the developments at this point is Oliver Regan. He is joining us live on the broadcast from London. Let me go straight across to him. Oliver, what more can you tell us at this point?
Yeah, it's been quite a surprising turn of events today here in London. It all started when we heard that the Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, had to cut short his trip to Albania, and the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, was called back from overseas. This was to attend an important cabinet meeting held by Rishi Sunak, which has just finished quite recently. And rumours were awash in Westminster that Rishi Sunak had decided, after much speculation, to hold a general election in the summer. Now, of course, many were expecting Sunak to wait until the autumn. All his previous communications is that he said the election would take place in the latter part of the year, and many people had penciled in a November date. And, of course, Sunak could have held on for as long as January 2025 to call a general election, but he has been managing a very difficult and divisive Conservative Party, many ministers and members of his party dissatisfied with the Conservative situation. Of course, they're lagging behind Labour in the polls quite significantly. The pressure was building on Rishi Sunak, and we've had some slightly more positive inflation data coming in the UK, which has potentially just been that little factor that has pushed Rishi Sunak into going for an earlier election. We're now expecting him to announce the date as being the 4th of July. That's expected to happen in around 10 minutes' time. The Prime Minister will stand outside the famous black door of number 10 Downing Street behind the rostrum and announce a summer general election. It's quite a surprising situation. Not many people would have called it. The Conservatives, of course, have been in a very difficult situation. And there's many saying that Sunak has almost had enough of the negativity and that he just wants to get on with it. He wants to try and utilise the slightly more positive economic use as a springboard into a general election. But, of course, the Labour Party will be licking their lips as they do hold a 20-point lead in the polls at the moment.
Right, so that's the latest coming in from the UK. The general election is expected to be held on the 4th of July. The UK Prime Minister is expected to make that announcement in just a few minutes from now. Oliver pointing out the backdrop against which the election will be coming in, given the kind of flack that the UK Prime Minister has been receiving on multiple fronts, also given the economic situation of the country. That in itself has been one of the primary factors why the Labour Party has been all the more mounting criticism, targeting the Tories. We are leaving it there for the moment. Oliver, thanks very much.
Thank you.
En Palestinian stat. El próximo martes.
Israel's right to exist securely.
Shifting focus for now, it's a big day for Palestine. Ireland, Norway and Spain have formally moved to recognize a Palestinian state from the 28th of May. The announcement has come at a time when the high death toll and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza has outraged the world. There have also been increased calls of finding a solution to the Palestinian question. It is a historic decision, sure to further deepen Netanyahu's isolation globally.
Today, Ireland, Norway and Spain are announcing that we recognise the state of Palestine. Each of us will now undertake whatever national steps are necessary to give effect to that decision. To the people of Israel, I say today, Ireland is resolute and unequivocal in fully recognising the state of Israel and Israel's right to exist securely and in peace with its neighbours.
After having reached a consensus between the two parties that make up the progressive coalition government and echoing the majority feeling of the Spanish people, next Tuesday, that is the 28th of May, Spain will approve in its Council of Ministers the recognition of the State of Palestine.
The government has decided that Norway will recognize the state of Palestine. Norway's recognition will come into force on May 28th. With that, Norway will regard Palestine as an independent state with all the rights and duties that this entails.
Palestinians have welcomed the announcements, seeing it as an affirmation of their decades-long quest for statehood in East Jerusalem, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, all territories seized by Israel in 1967.
This is a great thing. We hope other countries will recognize the Palestinian state as Spain and recently Norway and Ireland did. We have the right to live like other countries, to have a state and to live in freedom like other countries in the world.
The new generation of youth and the movements of universities played a big role in impacting world governments to change their stance on the Palestinian cause. This in itself is something that we are proud of, and we thank the countries Spain and Norway.
Spain and Ireland have said that their decision was not against Israel, nor was it in favor of Hamas. They say that their decision was in support of peace. But that did not stop Israel from responding with fury. Denouncing their decisions, Israel recalled its ambassadors to the three countries. You see, this was a second setback for Israel this week after the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, ICC, said he would seek arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister and his Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant. Not just the ICC, by the way, the International Court of Justice is also considering charges of genocide, something that Israel has strenuously denied. On Wednesday, in fact, Israel not only recalled its ambassadors to Ireland, Spain and Norway, it also summoned their envoys, accusing the Europeans of, quote-unquote, rewarding Hamas for its October 7 attack on Israel. And in response to the announcements in Europe, Israel's far-right National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, paid a provocative visit to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Remember, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is a flashpoint in Jerusalem, sacred to both Muslims and Jews.
The states that today recognized a Palestinian state are giving a prize to the Nakba forces, to the murderers and the abusers, and to them I say, we won't allow even a declaration of a Palestinian state.
Netanyahu's government opposes Palestinian statehood. They say that the conflict can only be resolved through direct negotiations. These negotiations that he talks about collapsed over 15 years ago. The formal recognition of a Palestinian state by Norway, Spain and Ireland, which all have a record of friendly ties with both the Israelis and the Palestinians, is planned for the 28th of May. It's not surprising because they have long advocated for a Palestinian state. Now, will these decisions have any impact on the war in Gaza? Unlikely, at least not immediately. But it has put renewed focus on a solution, a sustainable solution. The international community seeing the creation of Palestinian state alongside Israel as the only practical and realistic way to resolve the conflict? In the past weeks, several European Union countries have indicated plans to recognize the Palestinian state. But where does the US, a close ally of Israel, stand on the matter? The US as well as the UK are among those countries that back the idea of an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. They say it should come as a part of a negotiated settlement. It's called the two-state solution. It's still seen by many countries, including India, as the path to peace. But here's the challenge. The talks have been moribund for over a decade. Obstacles that have impeded the two-state solution include Jewish settlement in occupied land, quote-unquote, that the Palestinians seek for a state. It includes uncompromising positions on core issues including borders, the fate of Palestinian refugees, and the status of Jerusalem, the ancient city holy to both Muslims and Jews. The two-state solution was the bedrock of the US-backed peace process ushered in by the 1993 Oslo Accords. The Accords led the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO, to recognize Israel's right to exist. It renounced violence. It called for the creation of the Palestinian Authority. Palestinians had hoped that this would be a step towards an independent state with East Jerusalem as the capital. But the process was hit by rejection on both sides. And since then, the obstacles have grown with time. Politics further added to the complications. But what really is the way forward? How to put an end to Gazans' misfortunes? That's the question that needs immediate solution. As it stands right now, Israel aims to annihilate Hamas. It says it will not agree to any deal that leaves Hamas in power. Netanyahu government saying Gaza must be demilitarized and be brought under Israel's full security control. But he also said that Israel will not govern Gaza or re-establish settlements there. Meanwhile, Hamas saying that any arrangement for Gaza that excludes it are an illusion. In light of the firm positions taken by both sides, is the recognition of a Palestinian state just a symbolic gesture? We don't think so. Ireland, Spain and Norway are major players in Europe after all. They hold significant sway in the European Union. Will their decisions set in motion for the EU to follow suit? And what about the G7? The writing might be on the wall. The momentum is building to recognize Palestine, to give it a legal status perhaps, and to find an urgent solution to end the misery of Gazans. Is the time now ripe for a final push towards a two-state solution, is the question. Is China secretly preparing for the next pandemic? You best believe that they are. According to reports, Beijing's top COVID expert, Dr. Zhang Wenhong, is spearheading research to explore how climate change impacts mutation and spread of infectious disease. Now, this is big. Remember, this is the same country that exported the Wuhan virus to the world. It's now scrambling to prevent the next global outbreak. According to reports, Dr. Zhang believes that as the Earth's surface heats up, bacterial, viral, as well as fungal infections will evolve, mutate, and spread to new habitats. What this means basically is that pathogens and their vectors like ticks and mosquitoes will obtain a more habitable land. And this will, in turn, expose animals to bacterial, viral, as well as fungal infections. Just take the United States as an example. The rate of new cases of encephalitis and Lyme disease, both spread by ticks, has significantly risen. In China, Dengue fever caused by mosquito has sharply increased in areas where it was not found before. From tropical areas, it's now traveling up north. Across Southeast Asia and Africa, malaria is still thriving. It has still not been eliminated. What's behind all this is the question. No points for guessing. Climate change. Reports suggest that scientists hypothesize that the COVID-19 virus, which spread to humans from bats and their habitats, are also expanding. Dr. Zhang notes how as the earth warms up and the ice caps melt, some species that have not emerged before may enter human society, including ancient species of bacteria and fungi. Coming back to China now, Dr. Zhang, who played a pivotal role in China's fight against COVID-19, is now collaborating with other experts towards building a global pandemic preparedness. But a global response requires scientists to work together and provide enough data, enough evidence and suggestions on preparedness. A goal that Dr. Zhang says he is working towards. As director of the Shanghai Sci-Tech Innovation Center, Dr. Zhang signed a memorandum of understanding with the University of Hong Kong. As part of the project, experts in climate change, public health, infectious disease control, as well as public policy, will be brought together for research. They will research, establish monitoring systems, discuss public policy. They will work with environmental experts and climate experts to conduct in-depth research on climate change and its impact on the spread of diseases. And as experts have been stressing since the outbreak of COVID-19, the key to preventing a pandemic is more data and routine surveillance. Dr. Zhang hopes that these efforts can help scientists discover alarms for incoming pandemics. They could serve as an early warning and hopefully trigger quick response actions. The top Chinese COVID expert said that a discussion between experts from multiple countries will be held the second half of this year. But there are challenges, you see, that scientists need to deal with. Beyond preparing to manage the spread of future outbreaks, scientists are also concerned with how climate change will affect treatments for infected patients. You see, antimicrobial resistance, that is when bacteria, parasites, viruses, fungi develop resistance to drugs that are meant to kill them, is a big challenge. Scientists worry that infectious pathogens can change and mutate over time, which means that they no longer respond to medicines that are meant to treat them, and this can cause infections to persist within patients and increase the risk of it spreading to others. In 2019, Zhang said that 1.27 million people around the world died directly as a result of antibiotic resistance. Dr. Zhang says that if there is one issue that scientists all over the world agree on, it is that by 2050, 10 million people will die of drug resistance annually. That, by the way, is equal to the number of people who currently die of cancer each year. All thanks to climate change, humans are becoming drug resistant faster than the rate at which antibiotics are being made. Currently, there is a lack of research on how climate change is affecting drug resistance. But according to Dr. Zhang, understanding this is the natural next step towards preparing for the next pandemic. According to the World Health Organization, an integrated global approach is the key. It includes researchers, doctors, government officials, world organizations, and global communities working together. And this is why the governments worldwide are of the view that it's not a matter of if a pandemic will happen again. It's a matter of when the next pandemic will happen. We are still coming to terms with the full scope and impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Are we really prepared for the next one? At least 40 people were killed, many others wounded in an attack by gunmen on Sunak village in Nigeria's north-central plateau state. where clashes between herders and farmers are rife. The armed men, often referred to locally as bandits, were fleeing an onslaught by security agents when the attack occurred. Attacks in rural areas and kidnapping for ransom have become commonplace in northern Nigeria in recent years, where armed gangs have targeted villages, schools and travelers, demanding millions of naira in ransom. Here's a report sent by WION's correspondent, Louisa Olani.
The Sunak mining community was thrown into mourning. You could feel their pain from their ululations and their weeping at this funeral procession in Jos, Nigeria. Hours prior, gunmen on motorbikes raided their village in central Nigeria. They torched their houses and aimlessly shot at people, killing up to 40 villagers in the end. The attack late on Monday on Wase district in Plateau State was the latest violence in an area which has long been a flashpoint for disputes over resources and for outbreaks in intercommunal clashes. The Plateau State Commissioner for Information confirmed the incident to the media. He had initially stated that 9 people were killed, but later confirmed the number to be between 40 and 42. Other people had gunshot wounds and residents were searching for others reported missing. According to the police, the attackers were fleeing a security forces operation against bandits using the Bangalala forest as a hideout. Police say 9 bandits had been killed in the operation. Sitting on the dividing line between Nigeria's mostly Muslim north and predominantly Christian south, Plateau State often sees outbreaks of violence sparked by disputes between nomadic herders and pastoral farmers. Climate change has contributed to escalating tensions over grazing land, water access and other resources such as the state's metro reserves. Parts of northern and central Nigeria have also been terrorized by heavily armed gangs that loot villages and carry out mass kidnappings for ransom. In December, almost 200 people were killed in Plateau's Bokos and Barkin Ladi districts over several days of violence during the Christmas period. A month later, intercommunal clashes erupted in Plateau's Mango town that left churches and mosques burned. More than 50 people died and thousands were displaced. Wase has deposits of zinc and lead, while Plateau as a whole is known for its tin mining industry.
Various media reports say residents scampered for safety as these gunmen in their numbers raided the community with sophisticated weapons, disrupting the day's activities. Now, Plateau State, Nigeria has been fraught with a series of armed attacks in recent times, with thousands of persons killed in recurrent violence in the state since 1994. From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olani, WION, World is One.
It's not every day that a passenger dies on a plane because of turbulence. And when it does happen, it warrants a deep dive. What's really going on in our skies? Is flying not safe anymore? Do airlines and civil aviation authorities need to revise the rules of flying? Because what happened to the Singapore Airlines flight was unusual. One moment the plane was at cruising altitude and the next moment it was shaking. Soon the plane dropped 6,000 feet. A passenger died. 30 others were injured. Some, by the way, remain in a critical condition. It's scary. And it can happen to anyone. And which is why we must ask, what on earth happened yesterday? Singapore Airlines says it is investigating the cause of extreme turbulence. In the same month, last year, an Air India flight had taken off from New Delhi. It was headed to Sydney. The plane was hit by severe turbulence. At least 7 passengers were injured. Incidents of turbulence are increasing around the world. Why does turbulence happen? Mostly because of strong winds, sometimes because of storms. Turbulence is expected when a flight is ascending or descending. This is very common. And it's why it is mandatory to keep your seatbelts on during takeoff and landing. But the Singapore Airlines flight was hit by turbulence at cruising height. That's when people relax. They are walking around the cabin. The crew also is at ease. Food is being served. Trays are perhaps being cleared. What explains turbulence at such a height is the question. Sometimes at a higher altitude, a plane is hit by turbulence because it is flying close to another aircraft. Turbulence is also common near mountain ranges or at the edges of the jet streams. Then you have clear air turbulence. It's dangerous because, as the name suggests, clear air turbulence cannot be seen. It is undetectable. It does not show up on the weather radar. And going back across now to the latest coming in from the UK, where Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is speaking regarding the general elections to be held in the country.
You would rise to the moment. Or I could accept the inevitable, millions of job losses, and pick up the pieces. In truth, it was no choice at all. I have never and will never leave the people of this country to face the darkest of days alone. And you know that because you've seen it. As I did then, I will forever do everything in my power to provide you with the strongest possible protection I can. That is my promise to you. Because for so many of us, it's easy to forget the scale of what we've been through. We were hit by a pandemic that upended normal life. Who would have thought that the government would ever tell us how many times a day we could leave our homes? Then, just as we were recovering from COVID, war returned to Europe, with Putin's invasion of Ukraine sending your energy bills spiralling. I came to office, above all, to restore economic stability. Economic stability is the bedrock of any future success, whether that is rising wages and good jobs, investment in our public services, or the defence of the country. And because of our collective sacrifice and your hard work, we have reached two major milestones in delivering that stability, showing that when we work together, anything is possible. Our economy is now growing faster than anyone predicted, outpacing Germany, France, and the United States. And this morning it was confirmed that inflation is back to normal. This means that the pressure on prices will ease and mortgage rates will come down. This is proof that the plan and priorities I set out are working. I recognise that it has not always been easy. Some of you will only just be starting to feel the benefits, and for some, it might still be hard when you look at your bank balance. But this hard-earned economic stability was only ever meant to be the beginning. The question now is how, and who do you trust to turn that foundation into a secure future for you, your family, and our country? Now is the moment for Britain to choose its future, to decide whether we want to build on the progress we have made or risk going back to square one with no plan and no certainty. Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July. This election will take place at a time when the world is more dangerous than it has been since the end of the Cold War. Putin's Russia is waging a brutal war in Ukraine, and will not stop there if he succeeds. That war has also made it all too clear the risk to our energy security. In the Middle East, the forces of Islamist extremism threaten regional and ultimately global stability. These tensions are exploited by extremists who seek to undermine our values and divide our society here at home. China is looking to dominate the 21st century by stealing a lead in technology. And migration is being weaponized by hostile states to threaten the integrity of our borders. These uncertain times call for a clear plan and bold action to chart a course to a secure future. You must choose in this election who has that plan, who is prepared to take the bold action necessary to secure a better future for our country and our children. Now, I cannot and will not claim that we have got everything right. No government should. But I am proud of what we have achieved together, the bold actions we have taken, and I'm confident about what we can do in the future. We've tackled inflation, controlled debt, cut workers' taxes, and increased the state pension by £900. We've reduced taxes on investment and seized the opportunities of Brexit to make this the best country in the world to grow a business. Put record amounts of funding into our NHS and ensured it is now training the doctors and nurses it needs in the decades to come. We've reformed education and our children are now the best readers in the Western world. We prioritised energy security and your family finances over environmental dogma in our approach to net zero. We fully funded an increase in defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. We made a decision to invest more in local transport that you actually use, rather than endlessly plough more money into HS2. We set out a comprehensive plan to reform our welfare system, to make it fair for those who pay for it as well as those who need it. Immigration is finally coming down, and we are stopping the boats with our Rwanda partnership. And we will ensure that the next generation grows up smoke-free. I hope that my work since I became Prime Minister shows that we have a plan and are prepared to take bold action necessary for our country to flourish. Now, I've stuck with that plan and always been honest with you about what is needed, even when that's been difficult. Because I'm guided by doing what is right for our country, not what is easy. Now, I can't say the same thing for the Labour Party, because I don't know what they offer. And in truth, I don't think you know either. And that's because they have no plan. There is no bold action. And as a result, the future can only be uncertain with them. On the 5th of July, either Keir Starmer or I will be Prime Minister. He has shown time and time again that he will take the easy way out and do anything to get power. If he was happy to abandon all the promises he made to become Labour leader once he got the job, how can you know that he won't do exactly the same thing if he were to become Prime Minister? If you don't have the conviction to stick to anything you say, if you don't have the courage to tell people what you want to do, and if you don't have a plan, how can you possibly be trusted to lead our country, especially at this most uncertain of times?
That was the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak talking about the general elections to be held in the UK on the 4th of July, lashing out at the Labour Party and at the same time admitting that he does not claim that they have done everything right. We're taking a very short break at this point.
Shock and panic in the Democratic Republic of Congo as the army foils a coup attempt and arrests 50 people, including 3 Americans. After Niger, newly elected Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko now calls for an end to French occupation and even criticizes the presence of the French military in the West African nation. And the kora, a Western African stringed instrument, makes a resounding return thanks to Gambian artist Sona Jorbate, Wild of Africa, at these times, only on WION.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players. Right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing. And welcome back. Thanks very much for staying on with us. You are watching Gravitas. It's now time for Gravitas Recall. It's the 22nd of May, and on this day in 1960, the largest earthquake in recorded history struck southern Chile. It had a magnitude of 9.5. It was named after the city most affected by the quake, Valdivia. Estimates were the rupture zone stretched anywhere from 500 kilometers to almost 1,000 kilometers. The quake left at least 1,655